Hello from BI Consulting Services. It's Nicole. We're here for a new video today. Super excited to take you guys through this. Hopefully you find it informative and helpful. But we're going to jump right in. So today's session is really going to be all around, as you might think about it, sort of the Power Platform is what I'm saying, but it's really a hodgepodge of different components. It's the projects infrastructure that Microsoft just recently released, a new version of projects. It's also Dataverse and getting a better understanding of what Dataverse is and how you might be able to leverage it within that Power Platform stack. We're going to hit Power BI a little bit in this video as well. And then we're going to actually probably do this in phases because I don't want to do a big, huge release. So you'll probably see sections to the video where we'll do a quick overview in the project management software project, a quick overview in Dataverse. We'll actually go into project and set up a project, and then we'll actually have the opportunity to go in and look at what the back end of Dataverse looks like for a particular project that we've stood up. And so at the end of this, we'll probably even do another video where we touch on Power Automate so that we can do things like send out notifications when a change happens within a project workflow. So if someone closes one, modifies one, any updates on that project at all, you get a notification from that. And so we'll probably do some Power Automate integration. That might be a video number 2. Because we got a lot of content to do here, but we'll try and see how many sessions this ends up being. My goal is to have basically each of these videos be around 15 minutes. So we're going to jump right in, guys. Really quick, I thought it'd be helpful just to show you some of the details that Microsoft actually provides as it relates to sort of the Power Platform stack, and in this case, Dataverse. And so you'll hear me talk a ton about the Power Platform, but you can kind of see some of the integrations here: Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, PVA, and Power Pages. You see some additional components below that: data connectors, AI Builder, and Dataverse, things that you can leverage in addition to as you kind of talk about what does this Power Platform actually mean. So a lot of people say, what is Dataverse? It's really a data storage and management platform. That's really all it is, right? So in the example we're going to talk about today, we're going to create projects in this projects environment here. Projects actually under the hood is all of its data is stored inside of Dataverse. Dataverse is just, in my opinion, very similar to your standard SQL environments, and it's super user friendly and intuitive for sort of business users to kind of go in and look around and peruse as well. So I find it to be a really great platform or tool to use when you're doing development and you're wanting to kind of have business users into this and add business users into this environment as well. So on the project management side, I'm fairly new to Microsoft projects. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert in this area at all. But recently, we've had a ton of clients come and want to leverage this environment. And so if anyone's used Planner within the Microsoft environment, I consider Project to be very similar to that, but with a lot more robust interface and interaction. Because of that, I think it's becoming extremely popular. The older version of this is a bit antiquated, not as user-friendly, doesn't come with some of the flexibility you're going to get within this because of the underlying data first integration. I think that makes it a super powerful tool. And it doesn't have everything from my understanding that the old Projects Online environment did, but I think that over time we'll start to see that change as well. But definitely not an expert here, but I do know it's for project management, right? So a great way for you to go out and manage your projects and understand how things are moving along. And with that Dataverse integration on the back end, you can get a ton of notifications and visibility into how those things are working as well. So without further ado, we're just going to jump in really quick. The first portion of this session is just creating a new project. I'm going to use a template that's already out here just for the sake of time, and I'm going to rename this template too once we get it out. Simple, right? Nothing too crazy. You can go out here. What I'm actually going to do is just go ahead and check some of the integrations here on this page, just so we can start to see how things look as you go in and you start making adjustments. It's fairly straightforward. You can open up any of these different components and start to see some of the sort of integration points here, any of the details. You can kind of dig in a little bit. With the normal, I like to consider this similar to like what you'd see on a SharePoint site, right? When you click on something, you want to add something new or modify an existing record inside of your SharePoint environment. This setup is very similar to that. So this is where all the data is. This is where all the content is for this project. You can modify and customize it as makes sense for you, right? If your different activities within your project engagement are slightly different, you can make those adjustments here. It comes with the board, and that board is very similar to what you would have saw in Planner inside of the Microsoft platform as well. You'll see some timeline or a roadmap details here, sort of a timeline on delivery and how things are going to kind of move through that cycle, which a lot of people like to see also. Any people, so in this case, I've only assigned myself in this particular project, but you can add additional folks and then start assigning those tasks respectively or whatever makes sense for you and your team as it relates to the project engagement. And then you can add some goals. I'm not an expert in this, but what I wanted to do was show you if you have a platform here within the Microsoft stack that allows you to build out your projects and then do reporting and analytics off that too, which is a huge win for anyone who's doing project implementation work. And the beauty of it is it's all of your projects in one place. It's not just one project, but every single project that you manage or that is set up that you have visibility into will show up in some reporting and analytics for you and your team. This is amazing. So anyone who's running 20 projects within an organization knows that having clear visibility into cost, timeline, and execution, how things are going, you know how important it is to have that visibility across every single project, and this allows for it. All right, so now we'll go into sort of the Dataverse environment and start to look around. So when you get into Dataverse or Power Apps, basically the Dataverse sort of tables behind the scenes that are developed are inside of your Power Apps environment. And this is where you would go to kind of hunt down every single sort of table or attribute that's fed from your Dataverse structure. So right, projects is an example of something that's under the hood. It's inherently connected to Dataverse. Same for Power Pages, right? It's another environment that will sort of just naturally allow your data to flow through into Dataverse. And so there's going to be a ton of tables out here. I couldn't tell you what all of these tables are, right? And I won't even try, but there's a couple of things here. You just want to go to the all button so you can see every single project associated with your company in this particular environment that I'm in. And so I know, because I've kind of already hunted them down, all of this data sits in what's called the projects tables. And so let's go find those. So these tables here are really the ones that are kind of connected to your projects environment. So let's just see what each of these hold. So this is okay, so this table looks like it has nothing. So let's go back and grab the project task table, which I know is the one we want to look at. So here, you notice when I start to click it, it actually allows me to click it because there's actually data and attributes in here associated with this table. And so really quickly, you can kind of skim through this. I know I'm kind of going through it pretty quickly, but it has some key details, right? The project task name, when it was actually created, what percent complete is it? Is it a critical task or not? If you just scroll over here a little bit further, you should be able to see the project name. And so you can filter it, right? So you can just filter it. It'll show you the projects that are in there. And you'll see here's sort of that one that we just created today. You can apply. So very similar to what you see in your standard sort of Excel sort of filtering functionality. You can do that here as well. And so this kind of gives you the details of what the project has in it from like a data standpoint, right? So here is the actual data in a user-friendly UI too. I think that's super important. You can literally go in here and modify any particular record that you want. This Dataverse environment is amazing for end users, folks who are comfortable in data because you're literally inside of your database making modifications and adjustments. But if you're comfortable here, the good news is it gives you a lot more flexibility to make modifications and adjustments without having to go and write, robust SQL to do so. So definitely a cool sort of environment for you to work in. So this is Dataverse, right? So the projects environment sits on sort of inside that Microsoft stack, and the backend for it is Dataverse. It's a backend database that automatically ports the data from your project into here. It's amazing. And you can see how quick it was. It's just a pretty instant process. You create it, and immediately these tables are created on the back end. Super seamless, super clean, and your business users can make edits or modifications. I don't know if we could ask for more. So now let's kind of go to the Power BI environment and just really quickly kind of plug into this data. So I've actually kind of started playing with this already. You'll see just really quickly an old table here with one of the custom roadmap platforms or timeline platforms out there, sort of already integrated into the report. But we're going to go through this step by step so that you can see how you would actually connect to your Dataverse environment. So hopefully this is going to be helpful. But if you have any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to just drop those in the chat. But we're going to keep going here. So now we'll go into Dataverse. In this case, I'm actually already, oops, I went to the wrong environment, by the way. I need to go to a different one. So it's already kind of recognizing, hey, you're logged in as myself. And I was in the environment. I kind of called that out inside of the Dataverse environment or Power Apps. I'm in this environment. So it's important that when you go into Power BI and you're starting to connect, you just know what environment you're in. Fastest thing to do is probably type in the words project. And then if you click it, data should start to port through. You'll get a good sort of pulse for whether you're selecting the right table or not. I feel like this is the right table just because it's the only project task table. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the transform data. I'm going to import this data, not do a direct query. You can do either. If you want real-time live data without a refresh to it, you definitely want to do direct query. In this case, I'm just going to do an import. While that data kind of thinks of loading, because it's the exact same table as this one, I'm going to really quickly just pivot up here. All right, so you kind of know how to do it, right? You go to new source, select Dataverse as your option. It quickly displays here in the Get Data section. You'll select Dataverse. You'll log in if needed, because sometimes you have to do sort of an authentication. Once you do, you'll be able to see all of your tables, and you'll instantly see things like these two tables here, which are essentially the exact same tables. For the sake of this, I'm going to delete this one now that we've kind of went through and I've showed you how to connect to it. But here you'll see all of your records. In this case, it's 141 of them. And if I go over here and I find the name column, and there are a few name columns, but specifically I want the project name column, you're going to see, oh, let's refresh this because I used the old one. All right, so now you can see the August 2nd project is in here along with the other projects that were a part of that project's environment that were created. So fairly straightforward there, just close and apply. So in this case, it's not going to go through any sort of refreshes or adjustments, but that kind of gives you an idea of how you actually connect to the data. And then you might say, what types of visuals or components you might want to see as it relates to this particular report. I'd say a standard one, and I actually used a custom visual for this. It is just your standard Gantt chart. So you have to go out to the actual get more visuals and go hunt down that Gantt chart. It's a custom visual out there. That was one that was added. I'm going to refresh the report so that you can see the new project that we just loaded. And then once that's done, we'll just really quickly kind of take this template that I've kind of put together here and just add a couple of visuals to the report so you can see how easy it is to kind of go from maybe no report to some sort of report integration for you and your team. So again, you've already see the roadmap here, just so you can kind of see how I created that. I've got the project task name, and then just a start and a due date, sort of start and end date, right? So when does this actually due is what I'm using for that end date integration. And then you can kind of see what's going on in here from like a timeline standpoint. Let's adjust this a bit. Let's move it over, take it in even more. And you can kind of see sort of what that looks like from a visualization standpoint. Okay, so on this page, again, I've just kind of put together a really quick template. This is fairly straightforward. I put just a simple shape integration here, and it's just a line. This is just a title. Then I added a couple of boxes in here to kind of give it some simple sort of definition, and then some buttons where you can actually navigate from page to page. We got 3 pages in this report, so I've simply went in and made sure that all 3 pages are clickable as you're going through them. So fairly straightforward, right? And then of course I've got right now, super creative, the exact same header on each page. So that's kind of a quick preview. Now let's kind of jump into the data and come up with some visuals for it. So we'll start with the project because that's always a good place to start. And we might want to put a name. Well, name's not going to work. Let's find the project name. Just project. It is. Okay, so we'll grab the actual project here. And we'll do sort of what's complete, because I think there's like a complete column in here. Nope, that's not going to work. We actually have to do some quick division. That percentage column is a numerical value. So let's shift it back. These percentages need to be shifted. Fairly straightforward to make that modification. There's a different column in here I wanted. I thought there was like a complete yes or no question in here. So let's take a look at the data one more time and see what we can find. Be a status column. It is. Not that one. Not that one. Project task status. These are all zeros. Okay, so let's do, yeah, because these are all percentage columns here. So let's do one thing. I think that's okay. So we can just do the percent complete. We know what those numerical values mean. And then let's just add in project task and is greater than 0. Okay. Okay, perfect. So you may say, Nicole, what are you doing? So right now I'm just trying to get something fairly simple in place to essentially show us across the projects that are in progress right now or going forward, what's the percent complete across those tasks that have, at this point, it's greater than 0, right? So if we say which ones have 0%, you'll see that here. I wanted to kind of show you, where are we at across all of our individual projects so you can see it visually. So you as a team can kind of react. So we're going to change this visual. Let me go back to the table because I think I'm missing one key component. So I got the project, the percent complete, and the count. All right, let's see. I may take this because I still want to keep the percent complete there, but it's going to be here. Do beautiful. Okay, so if you're looking at this visualization here and you're like, Nicole, what are you trying to do? What does this mean? And I'm going to clean it up just a little bit just so you can kind of see some of the things I do standard as I'm going through and doing any sort of development. There are a few things that I find to be sort of standard integration from my standpoint. I don't like titles on most of my axes, though. It's kind of something I don't really like to keep. Beautiful. And then on the legend, we'll make just a few tweaks here too, just to kind of clean the visual up just a smidgen, just a small bit. Okay, perfect. So you might be saying, Nicole, what are we seeing here? And I'll go ahead and change this title. Oh, wrong title. I don't want that tags. I just want the regular title. Okay, beautiful. So if we expand this out just a little bit, to kind of look at, what are these respective projects looking like from an implementation standpoint? How far along are they? So really quickly in these zeros, you might want to change the colors. If I were, kind of looking at these, I would definitely want to see the 0% and sort of a color that tells me, hey, that's not really great. And I would say anything else, pick your colors as you'd like, but I think the higher up, like if it's 100% and these colors are kind of wonky, some sort of green is good for that, right? Some sort of green, like green is always sort of green is a good number in theory, or at least that's how I kind of envision it. Positive numbers green, negative numbers red. So sort of my thought process. But here, luckily this is a sample, but if this simple project was mine and it had 0% complete, it may be something to be concerned with, right? So you'll be able to see here, where is each project from a completion standpoint. You'll also see what percentage of the overall project is complete. So 87% of this project is not complete, so that might be a concern. And for this one, 88% is not complete, right? So it gives you a little bit of a visual of how are things looking across this particular project, what's complete, what's not complete, details like that. The other thing you might want are some of the notes. And depending on what type of folks you have on your team, you may want to keep just the standard notes out here, or you may want to put just something simple like a word cloud out here so that folks can just see at a high level some of the key themes going on across the particular projects. Oh, my fault. This is a custom visual, so let's go grab it. Just search word cloud. This is the one that I normally use. Just hit add. Hit OK. All right, so let's call this just simple notes. Let's convert it to a word cloud. And then let me kind of show you some of the things I typically do when I'm looking at word clouds. There's a number of things you can actually do because of how this platform works. There are some things I typically always do. Let me just really quickly show you that. It's helpful to kind of standardize the data when you're looking at word clouds too, because if it's capital T, H-E, and then a lowercase T-H-E, it doesn't combine those naturally inside of the word cloud. And so you would have to do it. So let me just really quickly find the notes. Just pass them. I tried to search for the words notes. It didn't pop up the first time. Let's try it again. So we have these two description columns. Let me see what this column name is. It's called Notes Plain Text. That's odd. Why doesn't it show up? Let's make sure and just refresh the screen. We'll give it a second just to kind of go through and see if it can actually locate this particular column of data. So I think this is it. For some reason, the name's a little bit different, which is kind of odd, but let's assume this is the column. We're going to go with our gut and assume that's the column. All right, so we're going to actually uppercase everything in this plain text column of the data. And we're doing that because there's a few ways you can do it. You can always lowercase it. I always tend to uppercase all of them. I don't know why. For me, it's just easier, and I think you can see it better. The benefit of this is it allows for you to basically combine words that are frequently used a bit cleaner. So the other thing I'm going to do, just do a quick trim. These are steps I typically take when I'm looking at text columns. Just a couple of cleanup steps on the back end just to help make sure that you get the best you can as you kind of go into using the word cloud integration. And the very last step I'm going to do, just because I notice a period at the end of this, is just remove the periods. And the only reason I'm doing that is I'm sure project is pretty well leveraged. I'm assuming it may not be. But if it were, and there's a project period at the end, you might see project once with, once without. So it's just really me cleaning up that period integration just so we don't get that clutter once we go in and create the word cloud. So we'll see if this is the right column. If it's not, we'll use that description column that we saw just a minute ago. I think it was called description. So we were correct. That was the column. Just kind of named it. I guess the minute you get it inside of Power BI, it turns it into a more user-friendly name. So the next thing I'm going to do is just clean up, right? By default, I like to remove stop words. So you noticed immediately when I did that, if it's off, words like the, and, to, that, all those words that aren't super useful pop up immediately. Here you can see project is the primary word. That may not be a word that's very helpful, and if it isn't, you can always shift that or change it. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as it is. The other thing I like to do is just make my word cloud all in order, sort of just straight across, left to right. Easier on the eyes, in my opinion, but you can definitely do kind of what makes sense to you from a visual standpoint on that front. And I'm just going to put my title, sort of center my title, and let's make it do the same here. And let's just kind of make that just a bit smaller. Oops. One thing with the word clouds that you'll notice is there's a little bit of a lag. It is processing through a lot of just word data, and so that happens. But now if I kind of look at some of the different components, right now I'm just looking at the ones that are 100% complete. But if I go to 0.07, you know, and again, if these were notes were like that said, hey, we completed planning, these were some issues or opportunities, depending on what the notes would say, they would all pop up here. Right now, clearly most of what's in that 0.07 was from the planning stage. Nothing super insightful pops out, but you can also kind of just pivot through those and see if anything else seems to be helpful for you and the team as you're kind of looking through your individual project. The other thing that folks like to do is take those notes and just see them too, right? So if they've got, you know, the word cloud, they may drop the full text details below it. Project task name, and just the project column. I'm going to try and trim this up just a bit because I'm going to add just one more visual in theory to this report. And actually, let me take project name off just to trim it a bit. Okay, perfect. So now you know you're on sort of the August YouTube video section. If you wanted to look at what folks were saying about estimates, you could click the Oh, maybe it was the words established. But either way, you can kind of see, how things are going across each, and you can actually just add a filter too. So if I go over here, I want to just grab the start date that I created, drop it on page 1. You can sync all of your date filters if you want, entirely optional. Then we'll go ahead and add just one additional filter to the report. We'll put it on project just because it's one of the columns I think we'll want to be able to filter by. Make this a drop down. I know they changed that. So you go here. Make it a drop down. I like multi-select just in general and select all as an option. If you've got a pretty good background, I'm going to turn off the background. Oops, wrong spot. I just changed. That's good. And then if we go, we'll change the values to white too, just so when we see the filter. Oh no. See what I just did. There we go. All right. This title's a little bit big for the page. I'm going to thin this just a bit. I know it's going to probably let's shift the, oh boy, it doesn't like the change. Okay, perfect. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. We're going to change these visuals around just a bit so that they're a bit bigger on the page. From like a visual standpoint, it's going to be a little bit cleaner. Since we've done that, we'll want to just make the shift across the board. Make sure that aligns. We'll shift this over slightly. Fix our page navigation header so it's sort of clean on the page. Shift this to center. And we'll do the same here. Beautiful. And then I'm actually going to change the page canvas to be just a little bit bigger too. We'll just increase the width just slightly. And then just shift everything over. Beautiful. Perfect. And we'll go ahead and make the word cloud a bit bigger, because what I'm actually going to do since I've done that is go ahead and put my table here and expand out my plain text a little bit. I want it to kind of sit on the same page, even with the expansion. There we go. Perfect. And we'll rename this to notes. We'll give it a title. Call it project notes. No, super creative on that one. And then the other thing I like to do is just all of my values are data inputs. I like them to be a color I can actually read very clearly. And so I'm going to change that. And I also only want to show the ones that actually have notes in this case. So if the notes are blank, I'm just going to exclude it for simplicity. And then I'm going to fix the headers because the headers are different. Perfect. Okay, so there's a few visuals on the page. Let's add one more. Just going to kind of look through the, let's look at the parent task column. Let's look at the priority column. So, the parent task column has a lot of detail. So let's go to a column that has just a bit less. So, okay, let's do the project bucket. There's 9 distinct columns there. There are about 40 parent tasks. So, and I'm just kind of going through here and, what is it called? Planning? Oh, it's called project bucket. Beautiful. And actually, because they're just so similar in nature, most of these look to be priorities of 5. So just a regular table is going to be easier to see. Not a great visual because most of these have sort of high priority phasing associated with it. Let's look at the average priority across each project. There you go. A little bit cleaner. Still very similar in nature, meaning that the majority of everything in all of these projects are priority. And so it doesn't tell you as much as you'd like, but let me go ahead and clean this one up too. This one has a good name. We don't need to change that. Let's center it. Change this, and I'm going to actually probably do a video soon of just how it's a little bit easier to create a template. If you do some of the exact same formatting things every single time, it's just going to save you a lot of time and energy if you just do a template for it. So that way you don't have to go in and do all of these formatting things. Often the one thing you're going to notice with any sort of visualization engagement is that the visuals are super important. And so essentially, if you can come up with a way to kind of set up a standardized process, you're going to save yourself a ton of time on the back end. So here we go. Page complete. So this is kind of going through creating your project through the projects platform on the Microsoft stack, seeing that backend integration with Dataverse, and then pivoting all of that information into a Power BI report. In this case, I use this template, but it kind of takes you through the process step by step, iteratively, no calculations, no complex stacks. I wanted this to be fairly simple for your sort of novice or new BI user who's wanting to do some reporting within their project's environment. And this should give you the ability to do that fairly quickly. Hopefully you found this content to be useful. Our next video will be on integrating this with Power Automate. So how can we take all that we've gotten to this point and also start to send out some notifications on your projects as well. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have questions, drop it in the chat. But we kind of integrated a lot of things here. creating a Power BI report, or at least a page of a report for you and the team, showing you what a Gantt chart would look like within the Power BI environment if you were looking at a project and you want to replicate something very similar to what's already in the project's environment. Also, a little bit of a preview in Dataverse and a little bit of details on projects. Hopefully this was meaty enough and provided you with plenty of detail and information. If you have any questions, again, drop it in the chat. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We are always looking for additional folks to watch our content, ask us questions. We engage with everyone who asks us a question. If we haven't gotten to yours, know that it's in our pipeline, it's in our backlog. We are looking at those, and we look forward to hearing from you and getting feedback on what you thought about this video today.